Hi everyone, this is Danny Hartung with my AEP 855 Module 8 recording, talking about my moral compass and the ways that integrity and consistent moral decisions affect my everyday life, both as a professional and as an individual. So as Danny Hartung summaries go, this actually isn't that word heavy, but in this presentation I won't read it to you. I just will mention that these resources really helped me to focus on the concept of morality and apply it outside of these separate spheres. So whereas I keep my work life and my personal life separate on paper, we all know as educational professionals that that's really not the reality. I take my work home all the time. I bring my personal life to my classroom all the time. And even though I maintain professional boundaries, it's important for me to recognize and to accept that I'm going to be held to a high ethical standard in the community because of my position. And especially as I move into more of a leadership role, it's important for me to be cognizant of my actions and their really public nature, even when I think I may be saying things or doing things in private. A good example of this would be social media. Even though I don't friend students or add or follow students on any sort of social media until after they've graduated, it is still on my mind every time I post, and I try to limit anything that would be inflammatory or anything that would be derogatory. I don't want to post any of that. One, because I want to be a good person in my personal life, those are my ethics and my values. But two, I know that that will reflect on my profession and on my school district as an organization. I also thought that it was interesting to conceptualize these ideas using our resources from this week's module as having lines drawn in the sand. So there might be a certain point where you would be okay with some sort of moral ambiguity, but at some point you have to draw the line. And as another one of our speakers pointed out, we should really not even get close to that line, because the more comfortability that we grow getting closer to things that do not align with our ethics and with our values and our virtues, the easier it is to cross that line eventually over time. And so even though these things don't happen overnight, our morals and our ethics don't change overnight, they can very well happen when no one's watching over a long period of time. So I want to work to build up my ethical reflexes to be able to have reflected on these things, these baseline values and virtues and things that I base my own moral code on and my ethical code on. I want to reflect on those. I want to be very articulate, or I want to articulate those very explicitly rather, and I want to be able to at a moment's notice, if I come into a situation where it seems like we might be dealing with some vagueness or some gray area, I know exactly where I stand, and the decision shouldn't be a difficult one for me. And if I do this, and if everyone does this, it will not only make my specific organization more ethical in practice, but it will also help us as a larger society to become and stay more ethical and ethically minded. So this is my moral compass. I decided to go with something very bright and colorful because even though that isn't really an ethical value when you first look at the face of it, I do put huge stock into environment and making my environment a good one for learning and for reflection and for just self-expression. And so that's why I went with this graphic. I wanted to go through and zoom in a little bit on each one of these points on my moral compass. I did note that all of the points pointed to something positive. I didn't even want any of that negative on my compass at all. I don't want to be practicing it or close to it or engaging in it at all. So the first point on my moral compass is empowerment. It goes for me and for those around me. I think it's a huge basis for being able to accomplish anything or to strive for success, is that we have to be empowered. We have to have high levels of self-efficacy and sort of nurture that in other people so that we can all move toward the ability to make those ethical decisions confidently. The next point is inclusion. So just being able to make space for everyone, to me, that's a huge point, a huge foundational point of my moral compass and my ethical code that I live by. I don't want anyone to ever feel like they're not worthy of my time or my attention or my respect, because I think that as humans, we should be intrinsically motivated to show everyone their inherent worth in everything that we do and say. The next one, it's a little blurry now that I present it, but it says respect nature. So nature and the earth and all of these gifts that we've been given in our environment are a huge part of my wellness and self-care. So being in nature and doing things in nature that are respectful are very important to me. Working hard and dreaming big. So I believe in playing hard, but also having a high work ethic, a very strong work ethic. And this has guided me through my entire life. My parents instilled in me that if you want something, you don't ask for it, you go out and earn it. And so I know that that is, in looking back at inclusion, that's not always the only way to look at it. We can't always be black and white, and everyone should pull themselves up by their bootstraps. But it is a really good starting point for everyone when we're striving for something. The first thing that we should do is hit the ground running and work hard and continue to apply ourselves to the best of our ability to strive for those goals and for those successes. The next point on my moral compass is mentorship, coaching, being a role model. This is a huge part of my identity, even outside of my professional sphere. And again, these things are they kind of mold and blend together. But I find myself in a mentorship position often with athletes or with young people in our community who are looking for tutoring or homework help or just whatever kind of support that they need. My door and my husband's door is always open. Whereas we don't have kids of our own, we're always more than willing to give of our time for the students in our community and in our district. And on the flip side of that, mentorship as a mentee has always been very important to me. The best way that I learn is to sort of attach myself to someone and have them give me their example and their insights and their knowledge and wisdom so that I can then internalize that and pass it on to someone else later. And the last one is tact. I know that a lot of people might say honesty, but I did learn once, I heard a quote that honesty without tact is simply cruelty. And so that really stuck with me because I think sometimes people say cruel or unkind things and they just say, well, I'm just being honest. And to me, that's not good enough. We need to be tactful as well as honest, and we need to give the best parts of ourselves to others so that we can then include and empower and mentor everyone, and that everyone can be lifted up to their highest level of success. At the middle of my moral compass is relationships, relationships, relationships. That is so hugely important to me, whether that be between myself and my colleagues, myself and my administration, myself and my students, or athletes, or friends. Just building relationships, it's really dawned on me, especially the last several years, because in my undergrad, I was very focused on trying to strive for success in my track and field career. And while I did that, and I'm very proud of my accomplishments, my one regret looking back was that I sometimes sacrificed relationships in order to do so. So now, looking at how thankful I am for all the great relationships I have and I have to build on, I am really focusing on making those a priority because if I look at my life from a macro point of view, those are really what have made my life worth living and what have given me meaning and richness in my experience. So relationships are the foundation for my entire moral compass. These are my references here, the NELP standards incorporated into those resources that we were provided. I think that this NELP 2.3, we worked with it earlier this week and then again today. It helps us to identify foundational values and then not only to reflect on them, but to then model them for others. And so this assignment allowed me the opportunity to reflect on my own moral values and then in addition sort of start to plan for the future. How am I going to model these for my students? Or how could I better model these in my community? This is relevant for me because I have a hard time with this concept. I don't like the idea of objective capital T truth. I have long been a proponent of doing what's right for you, doing what's right for the situation. But this assignment was really relevant to me because it pushed me to sort of define some of those truths, even though maybe there is a lot of nuance in around the area of ethics. It's important for us to define and internalize some capital T truths, some objective, for sure, all the time truths, and in order to use that to be consistently trustworthy and live with integrity. And after creating my moral compass, this helped me to sort of orient myself, which is, I guess, pun intended, with the theme of compasses, but to apply it again, like I said in the summary, to my personal sphere as well as my professional. I know that the appearance of propriety and the appearance of integrity are just as important as my intent, and so I need to be able to demonstrate my leadership abilities, my trustworthiness, and my ability to capably and competently handle those gray area decisions in a moment of need. So these are going to help me to maintain my moral compass and update it as I find necessary with new life experiences and new knowledge, because when we know better, we do better. So those are my thoughts on this week's resources. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I look forward to continuing our learning with our last module next week. Thanks for watching.